My name is Patricia Bishop, and I'm 43 years old. For 10 years, I paid $1,800 a month for my parents' medical bills. Then the day I lost my job, my mom said, "Get another one, faster this time." She never asked if I was okay. She asked about Thursday's prescription, so I stopped writing that check. 1 month later, at Easter dinner, I put 10 years of bank statements on the table in front of the whole family. My mother knew what was in that folder before I opened it. Before we go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let me take you back 12 years, to the winter my father's knees gave out. Every month, on the last Saturday, I sat at my kitchen table after Lily went to bed. The house was quiet except for the refrigerator humming and the clock above the stove ticking past 11. I'd pull out my checkbook, write the amount, $1,800. Tear along the perforation, fold it into a white envelope, lick the seal, and press it shut. The glue tasted like chalk. After 10 years, I could do it with my eyes closed. It started in the winter of 2014. My father, Gerald, was 61 then and still pulling wire for a living, electrician. 40 years of crawling through attics and crouching in crawl spaces, and one morning his right knee just quit. The left one followed 3 months later. Double replacement surgery. Medicare covered the operations, thank God, but the rehabilitation, the Medigap premiums, the prescription copays, the follow-up appointments that never seemed to end, those fell into a gap so wide you could lose a family in it. Dad couldn't work. Mom hadn't worked outside the house since 1982. Their pension covered the mortgage and groceries barely. The supplemental insurance alone was over $700 a month for the two of them, and that was before Part D premiums and the dental and vision plans that Medicare doesn't touch. I was 33, freshly promoted to senior accountant at an insurance firm in town. I told myself it was temporary, just until Dad gets back on his feet. I said that in January. By June, I stopped saying it. By the following January, I stopped thinking about it. The check became automatic. Like paying the electric bill, except the electric company sometimes sent a thank you. Mom never thanked me. She confirmed. Every month, right on schedule. "Patricia, did you mail it? The pharmacy called about your father's blood thinner." That was her version of a receipt. I tried once, that second year, to bring up whether Keith could chip in. My brother was 40 at the time, regional sales, good salary, company car. Mom cut me off before I finished the sentence. "Your brother has his own family to worry about. Don't start." So I didn't start. I didn't start for 10 years. I just sat at that table, licked those envelopes, and watched the clock tick past 11:47, then midnight, then later. The thing about carrying something for a long time is that you forget what your arms felt like empty. Let me tell you about Thanksgiving, 2 years before everything fell apart. That dinner will make the rest of this story make sense. Keith drove in from his subdivision 40 minutes away. He brought a bottle of red wine and his family, his wife, Dana, and their 2 boys. He walked through the front door and Mom lit up like someone had plugged her in. "Keith! Oh, you look wonderful." "Dana, doesn't he look wonderful?" She smoothed his collar. She asked about his promotion. She told Mrs. Miller next door that her son was practically running the whole region now. I drove in from 12 minutes away. I brought a casserole I'd been up since 5 making, a bag of rolls, and that month's envelope tucked into my purse. Mom opened the door, looked past me at my dish, and said, "You use the big pan? I hope there's enough room in the oven." Lily helped me unload the car. She was 13 then, already taller than me, already watching everything with those careful eyes. After dinner, I stood at the kitchen sink, washing dishes. 15 place settings. Everyone else was in the living room watching football. I could hear Mom telling Keith's boys a story about when Keith scored the winning goal in some Pee-wee game 30 years ago. The hot water fogged my glasses and I had to keep wiping them on my sleeve. I tried. I dried my hands, walked into the living room and said, "Mom, I wanted to talk about the insurance payments. Maybe we could look at splitting." "Not now, Patricia, it's Thanksgiving." Keith looked up from his phone. What insurance payments? Mom answered before I could. Nothing, sweetie. Patricia's just tired. She patted the couch next to her. Come sit down, Keith. Tell us about the new territory. Later that night, while I loaded the dishwasher at home, Lily sat on the counter eating leftover pie. Mom, she said, Grandma acts like Uncle Keith invented breathing. I laughed because it was funny. I also didn't correct her because she wasn't wrong. Keith carved the turkey. I paid the bills. We each had our roles. The difference was that everyone applauded the carving. I found out later that Donna had pulled Keith aside that night and said, Don't make things awkward. Patricia just gets sensitive about money. I'm an accountant. I count things for a living. So you'd think I would have tallied it up sooner, but sometimes the numbers you avoid the hardest are your own. It was a Wednesday night, about 6 months before I lost my job. Lily was at a friend's house. The kitchen was dark except for the glow of my laptop screen, that pale blue light that makes everything look colder than it is. I opened the spreadsheet I'd been keeping since year 1. A habit, nothing more. Column A, date. Column B, amount. Column C, what it covered. Medigap premium. Part D, Gerald's copay for the orthopedist. Donna's dental crown. Gerald's blood thinner refill. Donna's reading glasses prescription. On and on, row after row, month after month, year after year. I scrolled to the bottom and let the formula do its work. $216,000. I stared at it. The cursor blinked next to the number like it was waiting for me to react. I didn't. Not right away. I just sat there and did what accountants do. I compared it to other numbers. A down payment on a house in our neighborhood, about $180,000. 4 years of in-state tuition for Lily, roughly $120,000. A used car every year for 20 years. Then I thought about Lily's 529 college savings plan. I'd opened it when she was born with such good intentions. Automatic deposits, compound interest, all the responsible parent math. But 3 years earlier, when Dad needed his second knee surgery, and the out-of-pocket hit $12,000 in a single quarter, I'd pulled from that fund. I told myself I'd put it back. I hadn't. The 529 balance sat in another tab. I clicked over to it. $6,200. It should have been close to $18,000 by now. The difference was sitting in my parents' medicine cabinet. I closed the laptop. The screen went dark, and the kitchen went dark with it, and I sat in the silence for a while, listening to the refrigerator and the clock, the same 2 sounds that had kept me company every envelope night for the past decade. I didn't tell anyone about that number. Not yet. But I stopped thinking of the payments as something I did for my parents. I started thinking of them as something I did instead of my daughter. That's a different kind of math entirely. March 11th was a Tuesday. I remember because I had a dentist appointment for Lily on Wednesday that I'd already rescheduled twice, and I was thinking about whether I could leave work early to make the 3:15 slot. I didn't need to worry about leaving early. At 10:14 in the morning, my supervisor walked into my cubicle with a woman from Human Resources I'd never met. They had the look, the careful smile, the manila folder, the rehearsed sympathy. The company was restructuring. Our accounting department was being outsourced to a firm in another state. My position had been eliminated. 14 years, 20 minutes, a cardboard box. I carried it to my car in the rain. The box got damp on one side, warping the bottom, and I had to hold it from underneath to keep my things from falling through. A coffee mug Lily made me in 6th grade, a framed photo of her at her 8th grade graduation, a succulent that hadn't been watered in 2 weeks. That was 14 years of my professional life, and it all fit in a box that couldn't hold itself together in the rain. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off, rain tapping the windshield, wipers still. The box smelled like wet cardboard and old coffee grounds. I called my mother. I didn't want money. I didn't even want advice. I just wanted her to say, "Oh, honey," the way some mothers do. The way I'd say it to Lily. Just that. 2 words. Donna picked up on the 3rd ring. "Patricia, I'm in the middle of my show." "Mom, I got laid off today." 3 seconds of silence. I counted them the way I count everything. Well, get another one, faster this time. Dad's prescription is due on Thursday. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't ask if I had savings. She didn't ask about Lily. She asked about Thursday. I sat in that parking lot for another 20 minutes after I hung up. The rain kept falling. The wipers stayed off. And somewhere between minute 8 and minute 15, I stopped feeling guilty about what I was about to do. I drove home. I made dinner. I helped Lily with her geometry homework. And when Saturday came, I sat at my kitchen table at the usual time, pulled out my checkbook, and put it back in the drawer. The envelope that month stayed empty. 2 weeks is all it takes for the machine to notice you've stopped feeding it. The first letter arrived at my parents' house on a Monday. A polite notice from the Medigap carrier, the kind printed on cream-colored paper with a logo in the corner, informing Mr. and Mrs. Gerald Bishop that their premium was 14 days past due. Please remit payment at your earliest convenience to avoid a lapse in coverage. My phone rang at 6:40 that evening. I was chopping onions for a soup that was going to be dinner for 3 nights. I saw Mom on the screen and let it ring. Then it rang again. Then a third time. I put the knife down and answered. There's a letter from the insurance company. No hello. No how are you. What did you do? I didn't do anything, Mom. That's exactly the point. Silence. Then. Your father needs his blood thinner, Patricia. You know what happens if he misses doses. If something happens to him, that's on you. I leaned against the counter. My hands smelled like onion and my eyes were already stinging, so I let them water without bothering to decide whether it was the onions or something else. Mom, I lost my job. I told you that. And I told you to get another one. People find jobs every day. I'm trying, Mom, but I can't pay $1,800 I don't have. Then borrow it. Ask your bank. You always figure things out, Patricia. That's what you do. That's what you do. 4 words that sounded almost like a compliment if you didn't listen closely. What she meant was, that's your job. Figuring things out is your designated role in this family, the way Keith's role is to show up with wine, and Brenda's role is to live far enough away that nobody asks her for anything. I told her I had to go. She told me to think about what I was doing. I hung up and went back to the onions. That night, after Lily was asleep, I sat in the kitchen and listened to the silence where the phone should have been ringing. Donna was already calling Keith. I knew because Lily had been at my parents' house that afternoon and saw Keith's name flash on the caller ID on the old landline in the hall. The machine had noticed. And now it was looking for someone else to feed it. Aunt Viv's house smelled like chamomile and beeswax. It always had, ever since I was a girl. She kept beeswax candles on every windowsill. Said they cleaned the air, though I think she just liked the way they looked. Small and golden against the lace curtains she'd hung when she moved in 30 years ago. I showed up on her porch on a Saturday morning without calling first. She opened the door in her gardening gloves, took one look at my face, and said, I'll put the kettle on. Viv was Dad's younger sister. 68, retired school teacher, never married, no children, sharp as a tack, and twice as pointed. She was the kind of woman who said exactly one sentence when 10 would do, and that one sentence usually hit you right between the eyes. She poured the tea and sat across from me and waited. Viv was good at waiting. She'd taught 7th graders for 34 years. She could outwait a glacier. I told her everything. The payments, the total, Lily's 529 account, the layoff, the phone call, the empty envelope. I talked for 20 minutes straight, and she didn't interrupt once. She just sipped her tea and watched me over the rim of her cup, her reading glasses pushed up into her gray hair. When I finished, she set the cup down and said 5 words that nearly knocked me out of my chair. I've been waiting 10 years. What? For you to stop. I've been waiting 10 years for you to stop, sweetheart. She told me she'd known since the 2nd year. Dad had mentioned it at a family lunch when Donna was in the restroom. Just a passing comment. Something like, Patricia's been a real help with the insurance. Viv did the math and didn't like the answer. She'd tried to say something to Donna once, about 5 years in. Donna froze her out. Didn't speak to Viv for 2 full years. Told the family they'd had a falling out. Without explaining why. Your mother told everyone I was the difficult one, Viv said. I let her, because I figured you'd get there on your own eventually. And here you are. I wrapped both hands around my mug and let the warmth soak into my palms. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Viv looked at me the way a teacher looks at a student who already knows the answer. Whatever you decide, I'll be at that table with you. I didn't know yet which table she meant. But I would. I want to pause here for a second. If you've ever been the one in your family who handles everything, the bills, the phone calls, the worry, and nobody ever says thank you, I see you. I really do. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to set a boundary with someone you love, even when it felt like it might break everything? And if this story is hitting close to home, please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss what happened at that Easter table, because it's coming. Now, back to what happened next. Keith called on a Thursday evening. I was sitting on the couch with Lily, half watching a cooking competition neither of us cared about. His name lit up my phone screen and I felt my stomach tighten the way it always did when family called now, like bracing for a car to run a red light. Trish, what's going on with Mom and Dad's insurance? I could hear his television in the background, some sports broadcast, the murmur of a crowd. He was comfortable, feet up probably, beer open. I lost my job, Keith. I told Mom 2 weeks ago. Yeah, she mentioned that. But she says you stopped paying their premiums? Just stopped? How much do you think I've been paying? A pause. I heard him shift in his recliner. I don't know. A couple hundred a month? Whatever the gap is. 1,800 a month. For 10 years. The sports broadcast filled the silence for a long time. I let it. That can't be right, he said, but his voice had changed. Quieter. The confidence leaking out of it like air from a tire. $216,000, Keith. I have the spreadsheet. I have every bank statement. Another silence. Then, why didn't you say something? I tried. Thanksgiving. You were watching football. Mom told you I was just tired. I heard him breathe out. A long, slow exhale, the kind people make when they're doing math they don't want to do. I imagined Dana in the next room. The boys upstairs. The house that was bigger than mine. The car in the driveway that was newer. The life that had never once been interrupted by an envelope on a Saturday night. Let me talk to Mom, he said. I'm sure we can figure something out. That sentence, let me talk to Mom, was Keith's signature move. It meant, I will hand this problem to someone else and call it leadership. He'd been doing it since we were kids. Broken window? Let me talk to Mom. Lost permission slip? Let me talk to Mom. Sister quietly hemorrhaging money for a decade? Let me talk to Mom. I said okay. I said goodnight. I hung up and turned back to the cooking show. Lily looked at me sideways. Uncle Keith? Uncle Keith. She went back to watching a man attempt a soufflé. He's going to let Grandma handle it, isn't he? 15 years old, and she already had the family playbook memorized. Keith called back 2 days later. I knew before he spoke that Donna had gotten to him first, because his voice had that stiff, rehearsed quality. The sound of a man repeating someone else's lines and trying to make them sound like his own. Trish, I talked to Mom. And? She's really hurt. She says you're doing this to punish them. That you're angry about the job and taking it out on her and Dad. I closed my eyes. Of course. Donna hadn't told Keith the truth. That her daughter could no longer afford to bankroll her medical care. She'd told him a story. And in Donna's story, I wasn't a woman who'd run out of money. I was a woman who'd run out of loyalty. That's not what's happening, Keith. She was crying, Patricia. I'm sure she was. That's cold. No, Keith. Cold is being told to get a new job faster when you just lost the only one you had. Cold is 10 years of checks and not a single thank you. He didn't have an answer for that, so he offered one of his own instead. Look, I'll send Mom a little something to help bridge the gap. But when you land somewhere new, You need to step back up. This is your thing. You set this up. A little something turned out to be $200. One time. I know because Mom mentioned it the next week in a voicemail I didn't return. Mentioned it the way you'd mention someone holding a door open. Nice gesture, not a solution. What stayed with me, though, wasn't the amount. It was something I'd heard during the call. A sound in the background. Donna's voice. Not words I could make out. Just the cadence. The rise and fall of direction. She was there, sitting beside Keith, feeding him lines, and he didn't even realize it. Or maybe he did, and it was easier to pretend he didn't. $200. After 10 years of $1,800 a month. I sat at the kitchen table that night and did the math, because that's what I do. Keith's contribution represented 0.09% of what I'd paid over the past decade. I wrote that number on a sticky note and put it on the refrigerator, right next to Lily's honor roll certificate. Some numbers deserve to be displayed. The second month hit like a door slamming. Gerald's orthopedist office called my parents' house and informed them that his follow-up appointment for his knee, the one he'd been waiting 6 weeks for, was postponed until the outstanding copay balance from the previous visit was resolved. $84. They wouldn't see him over $84. Mom left 3 voicemails in 4 hours. I listened to them in order while I sat on the bathroom floor with the door locked, because it was the only room in the house where Lily couldn't hear. The first was angry. I don't know what game you're playing, Patricia, but your father can't see his doctor now. I hope you're satisfied. The second was strategic. I talked to the pharmacy and they said the Medigap lapsed. Lapsed, Patricia. Do you know what that means? Your father's blood thinner costs $412 without coverage. $412. The third was quiet. Almost small. Patricia, call me back. Please. I sat on the cold tile and pressed my fingers into my eyes until I saw white spots. I wanted to call back. Every nerve ending in my body was screaming to call back, to fix it, to write the check, to make the problem disappear the way I'd been making it disappear for a decade. The guilt was physical, a weight on my chest, a taste in the back of my throat, metallic and sour. But then I thought about Lily's 529 account. $6,200 where $18,000 should have been. I thought about my daughter filling out college applications next year and discovering that her future had been spent on someone else's prescriptions. I stayed on the floor. That evening, my phone rang one more time. Not Donna. Gerald. Dad almost never called me directly. He communicated through Mom the way most things in our house communicated through Mom. By permission, by proxy. But that night, his name appeared on my screen, and when I answered, his voice was small and rough, like a man speaking through a closed window. Trish, I know this isn't fair to you. I waited. Your mother won't listen to me. She never has. Not about money, not about you. He stopped. I could hear him breathing, the shallow, careful breath of a man choosing between silence and something harder. He chose silence. Again. But this time I heard the apology inside it. Good night, Dad. Good night, sweetheart. Lily found out on a Sunday. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed with her laptop open, working on a practice essay for a college scholarship program her guidance counselor had recommended. The prompt asked her to write about a challenge that shaped her family. She wanted to check the 529 balance, something about showing financial planning as part of her narrative. I was in the kitchen making pasta when I heard her chair push back, the sound of bare feet on hardwood. She appeared in the doorway holding her laptop the way a lawyer holds an exhibit, screen out, evidence forward. Mom, where's the money? The 529 portal was open. The balance read $1,340. She'd clearly done some clicking, because the transaction history was pulled up beneath it. A series of withdrawals over 3 years, the largest one $12,000, dated the month of Gerald's second knee surgery. I turned off the stove. I didn't try to cover or redirect. She deserved the truth, and she was old enough to hear it. Grandpa needed surgery. Medicare covered the procedure, but not everything around it. I used some of your fund to cover the gap. I meant to put it back. Some? Mom, it's almost empty, I told her. Not everything. Not the full 10-year ledger, not the exact total. But enough. That I'd been paying Grandma and Grandpa's supplemental insurance. That it was more than I could afford. That I'd made choices I wasn't proud of. That I was sorry. Lily set the laptop on the counter. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She stood there with her arms crossed, looking at me with an expression I recognized because I'd seen it in the mirror, the look of a woman doing math she doesn't like. So Grandma's doctor appointments were more important than my college? The sentence landed like a stone in still water. I felt every ripple. No, I said. They weren't. And that's why I stopped paying. She was quiet for a long time. The pasta water had stopped boiling. The kitchen smelled like starch and nothing else. Then she said something that rearranged everything I thought I understood about my 15-year-old daughter. She uncrossed her arms and said very quietly, "They took your money and mine?" Not anger at me. Anger for me. She was 15 and she understood what my mother never would. That giving until you're empty isn't generosity. It's just empty. Dad came to my house on a Wednesday afternoon. He drove himself, which surprised me. Donna usually drove, or rather, Donna usually decided when and where Gerald went. He showed up in his old pickup, the one with the dented tailgate he never fixed, and knocked on the door holding a paper bag like a man arriving at a wake with a casserole. Inside the bag was a tin of butterscotch candies, the same brand he used to buy me every Saturday when I was 8. The ones in the golden brown wrappers with the little cow on the label. I hadn't seen them in years. I didn't know they still made them. "Sit down, Dad." He sat at my kitchen table, the same table, the envelope table, and wrapped his hands around a glass of water I poured him. His knuckles were swollen. His hands shook faintly. 73 years and 2 bad knees and a wife who spoke for him so long he'd nearly forgotten how to speak for himself. "I knew," he said. "About the payments. I've known since the 2nd year." I sat across from him and waited. "I saw the bank statement in the mailbox. I didn't say anything to your mother because He stopped, rubbed the side of his nose the way he always did when he was embarrassed. "I was afraid. I know how that sounds. A grown man, afraid of his wife. But Donna has a way of making you feel like the problem if you bring up the problem. So I just let it go." "You let me carry it?" "Yes." He looked at the table. "I let you carry all of it." He told me something else then, something I hadn't expected. 5 years ago, Aunt Viv had confronted Donna about the payments. She'd said Donna was using me. Donna didn't yell. She went quiet. The dangerous quiet. And then she stopped speaking to Viv entirely. For 2 years. Told the family Viv was going through something and needed space. Viv never corrected the story because Viv knew nobody would believe her over Donna. "Your mother controls the story," Gerald said. "She always has. I should have spoken up a long time ago, Trish." His eyes were wet. I'd never seen my father cry. Not once. Not at funerals, not at hospitals, not even when his own mother died. "You deserved better from us," he said. "From me." He left the butterscotch on the counter. I didn't open it. Not yet. I was saving it for a day that felt earned. The collection call came on a Friday. Not to me, to Keith. He phoned me at 8 in the morning, which was unusual. Keith was not an early caller. Keith was a "let's circle back after lunch" kind of communicator, the sort of man who scheduled spontaneity. "Did you know," he said, and his voice was thin and tight, "that Mom put my phone number as the emergency contact on the insurance forms?" I almost laughed. Almost. "No, Keith, I didn't. I just got a call from a collections agency. They're looking for payment on an outstanding Medigap balance. They have my name, my number, and my home address." Welcome to my world. The line went silent. I could hear something new in that silence. Not the soft padding of a man in a recliner, but the pacing of someone standing up, walking circles in his kitchen, probably looking at Dana with the universal expression of a person realizing they've stepped in something deep. How long has this been going on? He asked. Really? 10 years. 1,800 a month. I told you this already. I know, but I don't know what I thought. I thought maybe you were exaggerating. Keith, I'm an accountant. I don't exaggerate numbers. He asked the questions he should have asked a decade ago. How much total? Why just me? Why Mom never told him? I answered each one plainly, the same way I'd present a quarterly report. Facts, dates, dollar amounts, no editorial. Then he asked the one that mattered. Why didn't Mom just ask me to help? Because if she asked you, she'd have to admit there was a cost. I was easier. I didn't need to be asked. I just did it. Another long silence. I heard Dana's voice in the background. Who is it? And Keith muffled the phone to answer her. When he came back, something had shifted. She's been telling me you stopped paying because you're angry, like it's a tantrum. I know what she told you. That's a lie. You just can't afford it. Correct? And she knows that. She's known that since the day I called her from the parking lot. I heard him sit down, the recliner again. But this time it didn't sound comfortable. It sounded like a man who had just realized the chair he'd been sitting in was borrowed too. He didn't offer to take over the payments. Not yet. But for the first time in our lives, Keith was angry at the right person. Job hunting at 43 is a particular kind of humility. You sit in waiting rooms with people 10 years younger, holding resumes that somehow need to explain why 14 years at one company is a strength and not a warning sign. You smile at interviewers who weren't born when you graduated college. You answer the question, "Where do you see yourself in 5 years?" without saying, "Not here, probably, but I'll show up every day anyway." I sent out 41 applications in 3 weeks. I got 8 callbacks, 4 interviews, and 2 rejections that stung worse than the layoff because at least the layoff was impersonal. The severance was running low. I did the math every night. A new spreadsheet, a sadder one. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, gas, Lily's phone, the minimum payments on a credit card I'd leaned on during Gerald's last surgery. Without the $1,800 going to my parents, I could stretch the severance another 2 months. With it, I'd have been underwater already. Lily did something during those weeks that I still can't talk about without my voice cracking. She came home from school one afternoon with a grease stain on her sleeve and a name tag in her backpack. She'd gotten a part-time job at the ice cream shop on Maple Street. 16 hours a week at minimum wage. She hadn't asked me. She hadn't told me. She'd just walked in after school, filled out an application, and started her first shift the next day. I found the application on the kitchen table. She'd left a copy. Maybe on purpose. I read it in my car in the driveway and cried for 10 minutes, and when I came inside smelling like the steering wheel, she was doing homework at the counter as if nothing had happened. Her hair smelled like vanilla soft serve and waffle cones. On the last day of March, I got the call. A smaller firm, 20 minutes south, needed a staff accountant. The salary was 15% less than what I'd been making. I took it before they finished the sentence. I didn't call Donna. I called Viv. I start Monday, I told her. Good, she said. Easter is in 2 weeks. You going to your mother's dinner? She hasn't invited me yet. She will. She'll want an audience. A pause. Are you ready? I don't know. Well, Viv said, when you figure it out, bring the receipts. She meant it in every possible way. You know, when I found Lily's job application on the kitchen table. A 15-year-old quietly picking up shifts at an ice cream shop so her mom wouldn't have to worry. That was the moment I stopped feeling guilty about the empty envelope. My daughter stepped up when the people who should have been stepping up never did. If you've ever watched your child carry something that should never have been theirs to carry, you know exactly what that felt like. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see what happened at that Easter table, because it's the next part of this story, and I promise you, nobody at that dinner saw it coming. Now, let me tell you about the invitation. The invitation came on a Wednesday, 11 days before Easter. Donna called, and her voice had undergone a transformation I recognized the way a weatherman recognizes a pressure drop, a shift in the atmosphere that meant something was building. "Patricia, honey." Honey. She hadn't called me honey since she needed me to co-sign on a credit card application 6 years ago. "I know things have been difficult lately, and I want you to know that I understand." She didn't understand. Donna didn't understand things. She managed them. But I let her talk. "I'd love for you to come to Easter dinner. The whole family. Keith and Dana and the boys. And I even called Brenda. She's flying in from Charlotte. Can you believe it? 3 years since she's been home. And Vivian said she'd come. And Mrs. Miller from next door. It'll be just like old times." Just like old times meant Donna at the center of a full table, conducting the conversation the way she conducted everything, with invisible hands and visible expectations. She was assembling an audience. I just didn't know yet what the performance was supposed to be. I called Viv 15 minutes later. "She's setting the stage," I said. "Of course she is. Your mother doesn't cook a ham for 15 people unless she's planning something." "What do I do?" "You go. You eat. And you bring that folder you've been pretending you haven't already put together." She knew me. I had, in fact, already started. Not a plan, exactly. I wasn't plotting revenge. I just wanted the truth to be visible for once, in a room where it could be heard by people who mattered. I wanted it to sit on the table like a dish everyone had to look at. That night, after Lily went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, my table, the envelope table, and opened the filing cabinet I kept in the hallway closet. 10 years of bank statements, monthly transfers to the insurance carrier, confirmation emails I'd printed and filed because I'm an accountant and accountants file things. I sorted them by year, clipped each year together, and slid them into a manila folder. 120 pages. I weighed it in my hand. It was heavier than I expected. $216,000 has a physical weight when you print it out. About the weight of a thick paperback novel, the kind you'd read on vacation if you ever took one. The printer finished at midnight. The house smelled like warm ink. I closed the folder and put it in my bag. 5 days before Easter, Gerald called at 7 in the morning. "Your mother's in the hospital." I was in my car, halfway to my new job, coffee in the cup holder, radio on low. I pulled into the first parking lot I saw, a hardware store that wasn't open yet, and sat with the engine running. What happened? Blood pressure. She got dizzy coming out of the bathroom, grabbed the doorframe, and went down. I called the ambulance. I drove to the emergency room. I didn't think about the money or the envelopes or the folder in my bag. I thought about the fact that my mother was 71 years old and on the floor, and no matter how many times she'd made me feel small, she was still my mother, and I was still the daughter who came when the phone rang. Donna was in a curtained bay, hooked to a monitor, wearing a hospital gown and an expression I couldn't quite read, somewhere between genuinely frightened and strategically wounded. She saw me walk in and said, without preamble, "See what happens?" 2 words. See. What? Happens. As if her blood pressure spike were a consequence I'd engineered, as if I'd reached into her chest and squeezed her arteries shut from 40 minutes away. I sat in the hallway on a plastic chair and stared at the floor tiles. They were speckled gray, the kind that hide stains. A nurse walked past smelling like hand sanitizer. The monitor beeped in a rhythm that should have been comforting but wasn't. For 1 terrible hour, I believed her. I sat in that hallway and thought, what if I'm killing my mother over a premium payment? What if the stress of losing the coverage is what did this? What if I'm the villain in this story after all? Then the doctor came out. Donna had chronic hypertension, diagnosed years ago, managed with medication. The episode wasn't caused by an insurance lapse. It was caused by Donna cutting her own dosage in half. She'd been splitting her pills to make them last longer, or to save money, or, and this was the part that made my stomach turn, to create exactly this kind of crisis. I'll never know which it was, fear or strategy. Maybe both. Maybe in Donna's mind, they were the same thing. A daughter who stops paying is a threat, and threats require countermeasures. I drove home that evening and checked. The folder was still in my bag. Easter was still on. Brenda arrived on Good Friday with one carry-on suitcase and the careful, guarded look of a woman visiting a country she used to live in. My younger sister was 40 years old now, living outside Charlotte, working in property management, single, busy. The kind of busy that's partly real and partly a shield. We hadn't seen each other in person in 3 years. Our phone calls had thinned to birthday texts and the occasional photo of her cat. She came to my house first. Not Mom's. Mine. We sat on the front porch in the cool April evening, each holding a glass of wine that was doing more work than any wine should. The crickets were loud, spring peepers, the ones that sound like tiny bells ringing somewhere in the dark. I told her. All of it. Start to finish. The amounts, the years, the spreadsheet, the 529 account, the phone call after the layoff, Donna's hospital visit, the folder in my bag. I talked for 30 minutes. Brenda listened the way people listen when they're recalculating everything they thought they knew. When I finished, she set her glass on the porch railing and said, "Mom told me you wanted to do it." She what? Years ago. I asked if you needed help with their bills. I knew there were some expenses. Mom said, Patricia offered. She likes to feel needed. Don't worry about it. You have your own life. So I stopped worrying about it. I felt something shift behind my ribs. Not anger, exactly. Something older. She told you I wanted to feel needed? Brenda nodded. Then quieter. She also told me you didn't want me to come home? I turned to look at her. What? Last Christmas. I almost flew in. Mom said you told her I just caused drama, and it was better if I stayed in Charlotte. I have never said those words in my life. I have never thought those words about my sister. Donna had built a wall between us using bricks she'd made from lies. Small lies, casual lies, the kind that sound almost true because they echo the shape of how someone might feel if you squint hard enough. I never said that, Brenda. Not once. She pressed her lips together and looked out at the dark yard. She played us against each other. Yes. For how long? I don't know. Long enough. Brenda picked up her wine. I'll be at that table tomorrow, and I won't be quiet. The crickets kept singing. We sat there until the wine was gone. I didn't sleep the night before Easter. I sat at my kitchen table. The same table. Always the same table. At 1 a.m. with the manila folder in front of me. 120 pages. Each one a receipt for a choice I'd made and a debt no one had asked me to carry. The folder sat in the exact spot where the envelopes used to sit. I noticed that and wondered what a therapist would say about it. The house was quiet. Outside, a light rain had started and stopped and started again. The kind of April rain that can't make up its mind. I traced the edge of the folder with my finger and tried to rehearse what I'd say tomorrow, but nothing sounded right. Everything I composed in my head came out either too angry or too rehearsed, and I didn't want either. I just wanted the truth to be in the room. Visible. Undeniable. Sitting on the table like a plate no one could push away. At 2:10, I heard the stairs creak. Lily appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, hair tangled from tossing, squinting against the kitchen light. Mom? Are you scared? I considered lying. Decided not to. Terrified. She padded over in her bare feet and sat in the chair next to me. She looked at the folder, then at me. Good, she said. That means it matters. 15 years old. She said it like it was obvious, the way you'd say water is wet or gravity is real. That fear and importance are connected. That if you're not scared, you're probably not doing anything worth doing. I thought about my grandmother, Donna's mother, a woman named Ruth who raised 4 children on a secretary's salary after her husband left. Ruth never complained. Ruth never set a boundary. Ruth carried the family on her back until her back gave out, and Donna watched and absorbed the lesson. This is what women do. They carry. Donna carried the family in her own way, by delegating the carrying to me. And I'd accepted, because I'd absorbed the same lesson from watching Donna watch Ruth. The pattern had traveled 3 generations. It stopped here, at this table, with a folder and a frightened woman and a daughter who understood fear better than her grandmother or her great-grandmother ever had. I put the folder in my bag. I turned off the kitchen light. The last time I'd turn it off, as the old version of myself. Good night, sweetheart. Good night, Mom. You're going to be fine. Donna's house was Easter ready the way a theater is opening night ready. The table was set with the ivory china she kept in the hutch for occasions. The set she'd gotten as a wedding gift 51 years ago, and handled with more tenderness than she handled most people. Cloth napkins, the crystal glasses, a centerpiece of yellow tulips that must have cost $30, which struck me as ironic given the circumstances, but I kept that thought to myself. The ham was in the oven. The house smelled like cloves and brown sugar and Donna's perfume, a floral department store scent she'd worn since the 1980s. She greeted everyone at the door the way a hostess greets guests at a fundraiser, warmth calibrated to the audience. Mrs. Miller arrived first, carrying a pie and complimenting everything in sight. "Donna, you look wonderful. How are you feeling after that scare?" She meant the hospital. Donna waved it off with a brave little flutter of her hand. "Oh, I'm fine. You know me. I don't let anything keep me down." Keith and Dana came next with the boys. Keith hugged Mom, but I noticed he didn't hold it long. Dana glanced at me with an expression I couldn't read, somewhere between sympathy and reconnaissance. The boys ran immediately to the backyard. Brenda walked in and hugged me first. Donna noticed. Her eyes tracked it the way a camera tracks movement. Aunt Viv arrived last, carrying a covered dish and wearing the quiet, steady expression of a woman who had been waiting for this meal for a very long time. Gerald sat at the head of the table, hands folded, saying nothing. On the kitchen counter behind him sat the tin of butterscotch candies he'd brought to my house. I hadn't noticed him retrieve it from my kitchen, but there it was, unopened, waiting. Everyone took their seats. 9 people around an oval table, candles lit, china gleaming. The scene was beautiful and fake and held together by 50 years of practice. Donna stood. She tapped her glass with a fork, a gesture so rehearsed it might as well have been scripted. "Before we eat, I just want to say how grateful I am for this family, for everyone who's here, especially," she turned to me with a smile that was all performance, "for the children who never forget their parents." Then she looked right at me and said, "Patricia, honey, would you like to say grace?" She handed me the stage. She just didn't know I was going to use it. I stood up. The chair pushed back against the hardwood, and everyone at the table looked at me, 9 faces lit by candlelight, waiting for me to bow my head and murmur something grateful about bread and family and the changing of seasons. I folded my hands. I kept my voice even. "Thank you for this food. Thank you for this table. Thank you for every person sitting here tonight, including the ones who came a long way to be here." I looked at Brenda. She gave me the smallest nod. "And I'm grateful for this table, because this is where I want to be honest with all of you." Donna's smile froze. It didn't fall. It froze, the way a pond freezes on the first hard night of November, the surface still and glassy but something cracking underneath. Keith looked down at his plate. Dana looked at Keith. Mrs. Miller's fork, which she'd been holding ready like a starting pistol, lowered slowly to the tablecloth. Viv folded her napkin in her lap and leaned back. She was ready. She'd been ready for 10 years. Gerald sat at the head of the table, his hands still folded, and for the first time I could remember, he looked directly at me. Not through me, not past me, not at the wall behind me. At me. He nodded. Once. The way a man nods when he's granting permission he should have granted a long time ago. Lily sat next to me. She put her hand on my arm under the table. Her fingers were cold. Mine were shaking. I pressed my arm against hers and drew a breath. Brenda straightened in her chair. She'd told me she wouldn't be quiet. She looked like a woman holding to that promise. The candles flickered. Someone's phone buzzed in a coat pocket and was ignored. The ham was cooling. The tulips stood at attention in their crystal vase. I reached under my chair and picked up my bag. I unzipped it, and in the silence of that room, the sound of the zipper was the loudest thing I'd said in 10 years. I pulled out the manila folder, thick, heavy, real, and set it on the table between the breadbasket and the tulips. Donna looked at it. Her eyes went from the folder to my face and back to the folder, and I watched her recognize it for what it was before I said a single word. She knew. She'd always known. This is every bank statement from the last 10 years. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The room was already silent. Every transfer I made to Mom and Dad's Medigap carrier, every prescription copay I covered, every dental bill, every vision appointment, every out-of-pocket charge that fell through the gap between Medicare and what they could afford. I placed my hand on the folder. 120 pages. I opened it and fanned the top few sheets so they could see. Columns of numbers, dates, transfer confirmations, all of it annotated in my accountant's handwriting, neat and small and thorough. The total is $216,000. Mrs. Miller inhaled sharply. Her hand went to her collarbone. Dana's eyes widened and moved to Keith, who had gone very still. The kind of still that isn't calm, but locked, like a man standing on a frozen lake hearing the first crack. That's what I paid over 10 years, I said. Not what I was asked to pay. Nobody asked me. It just became my job. The way washing dishes after Thanksgiving became my job. The way showing up early and staying late became my job. The way being the reliable one is always a job nobody applies for, but somebody always gets. I turned to Keith. You didn't know the amount. I told you on the phone and you thought I was exaggerating. I'm an accountant, Keith. Do you want to check the math? Keith shook his head. He was staring at the folder like it was radioactive. I turned to Donna. The room turned with me. Mom, I called you the day I lost my job. 14 years at that company. Gone in 20 minutes. I sat in my car in the rain and called you, and the only thing I wanted was for you to say, I'm sorry, honey. You told me to get another one faster. You didn't ask if I was okay. You asked about Thursday. Donna's chin lifted. Her fingers gripped the edge of the table. Everything I did was for this family. No, Mom. My voice was steady. Everything I did was for this family. You collected. The candles flickered between us. Nobody moved. Mrs. Miller's pie sat untouched at the end of the table. The ham gleamed in its glaze, growing cold. I wasn't angry. I was past anger. I was at the place you arrive at when the last debt has been counted, and there is nothing left to calculate. I'm not angry, Mom. I'm just done being invisible. Donna tried. I'll give her that. She tried the way she'd always tried, by reaching for the narrative she knew best. I raised you, she said. Her voice had that quaver she used when she needed people to hear the sound of sacrifice. I fed you. I clothed you. I stayed home so you could have a mother who was there. And I'm grateful for that, I said. I am. But raising me was your choice, Mom. It wasn't a loan I had to repay. Mrs. Miller's hand hadn't moved from her collarbone. She was looking at Donna the way you look at someone when a frame you've been viewing them through for 40 years suddenly cracks and shifts. The Donna she knew, the self-sacrificing mother, the devoted wife, the neighbor who always had a casserole ready, was still sitting at the head of the table. But the lighting had changed. Keith spoke for the first time. His voice was low, the words careful, as if each one cost him something. Mom, did you know Patricia was paying all of this? The whole time? Donna didn't answer. She looked at her plate. She adjusted her napkin. She reached for her water glass and set it down without drinking. Gerald's chair creaked. Every head turned. She knew. 2 words. After 51 years of marriage and 73 years of quiet, Gerald Bishop said 2 words that hit that room like a brick through a window. He wasn't loud. He barely raised his voice above the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen behind him. But the words carried because they came from a man who had made a career of not speaking, and everyone at that table understood the cost of what he'd just done. Donna's head snapped toward him. The look she gave him was the look of a general watching a private break formation. Then Brenda. My sister leaned forward in her chair and said, "Mom, you told me Patricia didn't want me here. You said I caused drama." She never said that. "You also told the family Aunt Viv had a falling out with you," I added. "She didn't. She told you to stop using me, and you stopped talking to her for 2 years." Donna's eyes went from me to Brenda to Gerald to Viv, and for the first time in my memory, my mother had no words. The woman who had controlled every narrative in this family for decades was sitting in a room where every narrative had just been exposed, and she had nothing left to spin. Her eyes filled. A tear slid down her cheek and landed on the white cloth napkin. It spread slowly, a dark circle on white fabric, and no one at that table moved to comfort her. It was the first time Donna's tears didn't have power. I let the silence do its work. Then I spoke again, and this time my voice was softer, because what I had to say next wasn't an accusation. It was a line in the sand. "I'm not cutting you off. I'm not punishing you. I love you, both of you. But I will not be the silent checkbook anymore." I laid it out the way I'd lay out a budget for a client. Clear, practical, without apology. The 3 of us, me, Keith, and Brenda, would split the cost of Mom and Dad's supplemental coverage, evenly, or weighted by income, whichever worked. Every bill visible to everyone. No more one person carrying it while the others looked the other way. Keith nodded before I finished. His jaw was tight, and he didn't look at Donna when he spoke. "I should have been paying all along. I'm sorry, Trish." Dana put her hand on his arm. She didn't say anything, but the look she gave me across the table said, "I'm going to make sure he follows through." Brenda spoke next. "I'll set up a transfer tomorrow, monthly, automatic. It should have been happening all along, and I'm sorry I let Mom convince me it wasn't necessary." Gerald was watching all of this from the head of the table with an expression I'd never seen on his face, a kind of stunned relief, like a man who'd been holding his breath underwater for years and had finally broken the surface. I turned back to Donna. She hadn't spoken since Gerald's 2 words. Her cheeks were wet, her hands folded in her lap, her posture smaller than I'd ever seen it. She looked old suddenly. Not the kind of old that commands respect, but the kind that comes when the thing holding you up is taken away. "I love you, Mom, but I won't love you at the cost of my daughter's future." Donna looked up. "I didn't know about Lily's college fund." "Because you never asked." The words hung in the air. Not cruel. True. There's a difference, and everyone in that room could feel it. Gerald reached behind him to the kitchen counter and picked up the tin of butterscotch candies. He set it in front of me and pried off the lid. The smell of buttered caramel rose from the tin, warm, golden, the exact scent of Saturday mornings when I was 8 and the world was small, and my father bought me candy and nothing hurt yet. Nobody spoke. I took a butterscotch. Gerald took one too. It was the quietest apology I've ever accepted. The morning after Easter, my phone didn't ring. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and listened to the silence the way you listen to an unfamiliar sound, alert, uncertain, waiting for it to stop. For 10 years, most mornings started with a call from Donna, a question about a payment, a reminder about a prescription, a small request that was never really a request. The phone was always first. Before coffee, before thinking, before I remembered who I was outside of being useful. That morning, there was just the sound of birds outside the window and the coffee maker Lily had set on a timer the night before, gurgling to life downstairs. The sun came through the blinds in thin gold lines on the bedspread. I lay there for 15 minutes and didn't reach for anything. The day unfolded quietly. Keith transferred $600 to our parents' insurance account. Dana texted me. "It's set up as a recurring payment. I'll make sure it stays that way." Brenda set up her 400 before noon, screenshot and all. I added 500, not 1,800, 500. And the difference between those 2 numbers was the sound of my own life starting to breathe again. That afternoon, I reopened Lily's 529 account portal. Balance, $1,340. I set up an automatic monthly deposit. Small, for now, but consistent. The kind of math that compounds. Gerald called around dinner time. He kept it short. He was never a long talker, and one revolution at the dinner table didn't turn him into one. Thank you, Trish, for last night. Thank you for what you said, Dad. I heard Donna in the background. She wasn't speaking, but she was there. A presence in the room, the way she was always a presence. She didn't take the phone. She didn't add anything. But she didn't hang up the extension either. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. Not the tidy kind you see in movies where everyone hugs and the music swells. It was the awkward, unfinished beginning of something that might eventually become okay. Donna hadn't apologized. She might never apologize. Some people's love language is absence of cruelty rather than presence of kindness, and I'd had 43 years to learn the dialect. But the pattern was broken. The envelope was lighter. The table was shared. For the first time in a decade, the morning belonged to me. 3 months later, on a Tuesday in July, I sat in a dentist's chair for the first time in 4 years. It wasn't dramatic. It was a cleaning. The kind of appointment most people schedule twice a year without thinking about it. But I'd been canceling mine since Gerald's second surgery, when every dollar I had went somewhere else. My teeth weren't falling out. I just hadn't been taking care of them, the same way I hadn't been taking care of a lot of things that were mine. The hygienist leaned me back, adjusted the light, and told me to open wide. I lay there looking up at the white ceiling tile, a paper bib clipped around my neck. Someone else's hands doing the work for once, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. The specific relief of being tended to, of being in a chair where someone else was responsible for the next 45 minutes, and all I had to do was sit still and let them. The new job had settled in. The office was smaller, the commute longer, the coffee worse. But the paycheck was steady, and $1,300 more per month stayed in my account instead of disappearing into an envelope. I'd built a small emergency fund. I'd paid down the credit card by half. The $529 balance was climbing again, slowly, the way anything real grows, not in leaps, but in increments that don't show up until you stop checking every day. Lily got a partial scholarship. The essay she wrote, about growing up in a family where one person carried everything and what it costs to be the reliable one, won a regional award from a women's foundation. I read it in my car in the parking lot of the ice cream shop where she still worked Saturday shifts, and I cried the way I used to cry over spreadsheets, except this time the numbers were going in the right direction. Donna and I talked every Sunday. Short calls, 10 minutes, sometimes 5. She asked about Lily. She mentioned the weather. She never apologized in words, but one Sunday she mailed Lily a check for $200 with a note that said, "For your books." The handwriting was shaky. It was the most Donna had ever given without being asked, and it was more than the amount that mattered. It was the act of writing it without being prompted. Viv and I had lunch every Wednesday at the diner on Route 4. Keith called every other week, which was 12 more calls per year than he'd made in the previous decade. Brenda's auto transfer hit on the first of every month. Nobody thanked me for what I'd done for 10 years. Nobody had to. I'd stopped waiting. On a Thursday night in September, I sat at my kitchen table. Same chair, same clock on the wall, though the battery had been replaced since March. The refrigerator still hummed. The kitchen light still cast the same warm circle on the wood surface. Everything was the same, and nothing was. I wrote a check for $500, not $1,800, $500. I folded it into a white envelope, the same kind I'd been buying in bulk from the office supply store for a decade, and I sealed it. The glue still tasted like chalk. Next to the envelope, I set 2 other slips of paper, printouts of Keith's and Brenda's transfers for the month. $600, $400, together with mine, $1,500. Not quite the full $1,800, but close, and the difference was covered by a Medicare plan adjustment Brenda had researched and Gerald had signed up for in July. It wasn't perfect. Families rarely are. On the other side of the table sat Lily's $529 statement, which I'd printed that afternoon. The balance had crossed $4,000. Growing. Not fast, but growing. the way trust grows, or forgiveness, or anything you've decided to rebuild after neglecting it for too long. I looked at the clock. 9:15. Not 11:47. Not midnight. Not the silent hours I used to occupy alone with my envelopes and my guilt, and my inability to say the word no. 9:15. I had the rest of the evening. I could read. I could watch something. I could sit on the porch and listen to the crickets and drink a glass of wine and think about nothing at all. I put the envelope in my bag. I turned off the kitchen light. I walked upstairs and paused at Lily's door. It was open a crack, the desk lamp still on, a college brochure spread open on her chest. She'd fallen asleep reading about dormitory meal plans. I eased the brochure out of her hands, set it on the nightstand, and switched off the lamp. In the hallway, I stopped. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't empty. The kind that's full of things that are finally where they belong. I used to think loving someone meant giving them everything. Turns out it means knowing what you can't afford to lose. That's my story. I didn't burn any bridges. I just stopped building them alone. For 10 years, I poured everything I had into keeping my parents' lives comfortable, and the day I needed comfort back, I got a dial tone and a deadline. So I stopped. And what happened next wasn't revenge. It was just the truth, sitting on a table where everyone could finally see it. If you've ever been the one who carries everything and says nothing, the one who pays the bills, makes the calls, shows up early, stays late, and never gets a thank you, I want you to know something. Setting that weight down doesn't make you selfish. It makes you smart enough to survive. Leave a comment and tell me, what boundary do you wish you'd set sooner? And if you haven't set it yet, maybe today's the day. Check the description for more stories like this one. You might find one that sounds a lot like yours. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.